Hi, and welcome to the second episode of Keen Minds. I'm Jen, aka Takata Saeko,
And I am Tessa.
and we are here today to go over the second episode of the fourth season of NBC's The Blacklist, called Mato. And we'll be covering today Red's reaction to both Tom and Liz, and the way that he approached that reaction to what's happened. Also, a little bit of Kate's reaction to it, and we'll touch on the task force as well, and go into a couple of parallels that we saw between the Keens in the second part.
And the most interesting thing that we are going to cover is the relationship between Red and Tom. It's one of the most fascinating relationships of the show to me, probably next to Red and Liz.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you start off with the pilot episode. Red goes in and has someone gut him. First off, the husband that we don't know anything else about other than he's the husband of an FBI agent gets the crap beaten out of him and stabbed twice in the pilot episode. And you're going, what is this poor guy in for?
Exactly. And then we find out it is Red who asked Zamani to go do that, probably with a dual objective of sending a little message to Tom, actually probably a mild message now that we know what Red does, and to have Liz find his secret cache of documents and money.
Definitely. And I don't think that Zamani was the first message that Red sent along, because we've talked about before the Dear Blood.
That wasn't Dear Blood.
The non-Dear Blood that Tom seemed very offended that Liz didn't catch on to that.
Yeah, that it's a fascinating relationship to me. They are in many ways they're similar, and it's been a wild ride if you really think about it. From that moment that we see Zamani gutting Tom, and as he said, cutting him like a totem pole, to the point where they are at the end of season 3, it's really a wild ride.
Oh, absolutely. You've got all through the first half of season 1 where pretty much the only person that knows for sure who Tom is, that out of the main cast, would be Red. And so you've got that wonderful scene in this where Sam has just been killed, when Red just kills Sam. And the two of them sitting out there at the hospital with all the veiled threats and everything that goes into a covert spy conversation.
And you mentioned it's not just Red threatening Tom. Tom is also threatening Red. When he says, my wife will be heartbroken, that's a veiled threat to Red. It's telling him, I know what you did, and if you think I'm not going to tell her, if I have to, I will.
Absolutely. And so I've always wondered what would have happened if Tom had caught an earlier flight, if he'd walked in the middle of all of that.
And also, why was he there? He flew like a bat out of hell to get to Nebraska on time. Liz, the daughter, was like, oh, I don't know, I got work, I can't go now. And Tom was on a plane. So I do wonder if either Aunt June or Sam himself call him and say, listen, there's things I got to tell Liz. And if I don't make it, I want you to be here.
I think that Sam knew who Tom was. I think that he knew who Tom was, recognized him for who he was, both in the fact that he's a covert operative and the fact that he was in love with Sam's adopted daughter. And I think they probably had, at the time, he was probably the closest thing to a father figure that Tom's ever seen. Because Bud is not exactly the stellar figure there. And so, I could imagine that he was the father-in-law that Tom needed at that time.
And knowing that Sam knows Red for a long time, at least since Liz was born, if we are to believe Red, that means that Sam was probably well acquainted with the idea that probably Red did put him in Liz's life with unintended consequences.
Absolutely. And he would have had a very different view on Tom than Red would, having been set back like he was. And so, Red was not in the middle of Liz's life at the time like Sam was, and so he wouldn't have known the personality that came with Tom,
Exactly. And that scene is priceless when they sit there and they're, exchanging back and forth. And a lot of people, I think that scene was a retcon. What do you think about that idea?
I honestly had not heard that until you mentioned it a couple days ago. I had not heard anybody call that a retcon. I hadn't stumbled across that theory. I still, for the life of me, don't understand why anybody would say that. It fits perfectly with things that happened throughout season 2 and season 3. Just all of that seems to fit well for me. Because obviously they're not going to sit there in the middle with all of these witnesses and go, so, this person that I hired to, basically stalk a young lady, that ended up marrying her, they're not going to have that conversation in the open. Tom has no idea who Red has sitting around. He has no idea if he has people, if he's got a sniper rifle on him right then.
Exactly.
And to be fair, Red probably doesn't know if Tom has anybody around there. Not that I think he'd be too awful worried about that, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not going to make a scene, a huge, fight between them in the middle of a hospital.
Well, they both are described by different people as reckless and dangerous. That is one of the first, actually, that was my first real clue to start looking for parallels, was the fact that both were described by different people as dangerous and reckless. And the one thing that you see is that how can anybody think that when Red would have Tom got it? How would he know who Tom is if he hadn't been the one hiring him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a retcon. I think the writers have had a fairly clear plan from the get-go on this, and they've been working towards it. And a lot of people don't like that plan, so they're less inclined to believe it. But, I mean...
we do.
Yeah, we do. And it seems to fit for me. As a writer, coming at it from a writer's point of view, I look at all the little details, and especially after the rewatch of watching the 3 seasons back-to-back this summer, there are a lot of things that I didn't realize were tying together that have come through and tied together. My favorite one right now is the fact that Liz's father has been mentioned in all 3 season finales.
That was a great, great catch.
And I went, wow, okay, well, maybe I need to give the writers a little more credit. And so I think that they're just so good that sometimes people... they underestimate them.
I think so. I think you get an idea in your mind, what the season should be like. And then when it doesn't happen like that, you go, oh, they don't know what they're doing. No, if you start thinking they do know what they're doing, maybe I need to wait until I can get all the facts line up in a row, then they do. Eventually they do.
And to be fair, I will admit to having been one of those people that has complained about continuity. And there are small things that are still continuity errors. I mean, it's going to happen, especially on a show with so much information. It's put together so quickly.
22 episodes.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, you're going to miss things. But regardless, I've come to the conclusion after the rewatch especially, and in recent moments, that I'm more inclined to sit back and go, okay, this looks like a plot hole. It looks like a dangling thread that they haven't gone back to in a long while, but they haven't let me down yet. So I'm going to have a little faith in them.
I always have my favorite thing is the bowl of apples that Red has Kate put in the hallway when in the director.
Everybody loves apples.
Exactly. But whenever you see something that doesn't seem to fit, instead of saying that it's a bad writing or lazy or continuity, it's probably just, I call them the small seams where you see that there's a piece missing there. That's all it means. And every time that I've gone through that, I've said, you know what? I was right. I got the piece and now it fits. And in that, it's interesting because as we go back to Tom and Red, and their next interaction is Red is keeping a very close watch on Tom to the point where he calls her on 219 and tells Liz that Tom has been sitting on the outside in a park, and then they follow him to the archives
in 119.
In Y19, okay. I'm sorry, yes. And that scene is great because it leads into the grand, when he delivers Tom tied to a chair, they ended up with a grand finale of 119 when Tom gets shot. And then Liz tells Red about Tom telling her. And we are going to eventually go into those two very conflicting and thought-provoking, if not other-provoking things. But I think that we need to devote a whole podcast in one of the
hiatus moments.
Yes, I think so.
Something interesting, real fast there, that but between the following Tom and delivering Tom into the, tied to the chair and the duct tape, because that poor man gets duct taped more than any other character in this show, I swear. Always the duct tape with him.
It's an indispensable spy tool.
It really seems to be, yes. But Red would not have done that. If we're coming at it from the approach, which I am clinging to fully and refusing to let go of, that Red does care for Liz. Red is really looking out for Liz's best interest, whether he's doing it in an emotionally healthy way or not. For him, he's doing the best he can to protect her. If we're coming at it from that point of view, then he is not going to deliver a man into her home who might kill her, who is legitimately going to hurt her. And I know a lot of people have issues with the fight. That'll need to be another one we touch on.
Yes,
the Mr. and Mrs. Keene fight. But
yeah, those two scenes they probably got three tough scenes that are probably worth 1, 2, or 3 episodes of this podcast on their own. But on a general basis, absolutely. I mean, the fact that Red waited for 2 years before going to Liz and surrender to the FBI tells me, maybe he was concerned about what was coming about Berlin, although he didn't know who it was, but definitely not be concerned about Liz's immediate safety. And of course, you don't deliver a man tied to a chair, especially a guy with that kind of training tied to a chair, because he got caught out of the worst situations before.
And then have all of the people leave. They were left alone in the home. There was nobody to help her. I mean, and so Red didn't think that he was going to do anything. And to be fair, the only thing Tom did was get to a point where he could get out. Yes. And so, I mean, Red judged that correctly.
Yeah, and when he walks in the home, he's not like rushing to her like, oh, yeah, you need medical attention.
Exactly. He knew she was fine.
You and I have a very different understanding of those scenes, and I think that absolutely stay tuned for those podcasts to come during the hiatus. But the next point where we see Red and Tom, and they get into because they've been talking a lot back and forth through Liz. What Red says to Liz, what Tom says to Liz, but directly a scene between them is in Dresden. Correct?
No. The next one would have been when they were sitting down at the restaurant where after Liz lets him go.
That is correct. Yes. Absolutely.
And so, which is really interesting, because if I were Tom, I would be very hesitant to walk in and meet him. I mean, I know that he doesn't have a lot of choices right there, but this is a man that hates him, and Tom is well aware of that. He's well aware of the dangers of Raymond Reddington.
And at that point, he did not even have Liz blessing, because
he didn't have Liz's protection. He didn't have the Major's protection. He was alone in the world at that point.
Yeah, that scene where he is burning those passports. He was just not burning the passports. He was burning his past.
Oh, well, yeah, that's later on. But I'm talking about in the restaurant itself, where he walks in the whole scene where he gets up after Red tells him you will not see her again. That whole scene. He's walking in very much, I mean, Red has the upper hand there, and that had to have been a little unnerving for him.
Yet one of the things that struck me the most about that scene was when he tells Red, after 4 months in that boat, chained in that boat, I didn't tell her about you. About us. And to me, that is, I always say, and people get all upset about it, that Tom and Ressler share one characteristic. They both do, their job comes first. And even they go by the book. The book is different. One is the law. The other one is a manual for undercover operatives.
The Tom Bond manual.
Exactly. Or I love the Tom Bond manual.
I really hope they go back to that. Liz needs to pop off with that eventually.
But the point is that he takes the job seriously, and at that point, I don't think it's fear of Red. I mean, what else has he to lose? He has very little to lose.
That's fair. That's very fair.
And he still didn't give Tom up. In fact, the only time that we see Tom give up a mission is when they threaten Liz.
Yes,
he's ready to die. He's ready to be tortured, but just don't threaten Liz.
We've seen that several times now.
Mm-hmm. And so that scene to me, when he walks in there and tells Red about, I think that it's a point that it's not a lot of people realize. That's a commitment to the job, not just fear of Red. Because if it were fear of Red, he wouldn't have never married Liz to begin with.
That's a very fair point.
He would have walked away. He would have,
And I think that's part of what happened with the Keens, is it took that moment of Tom deciding, and there is that moment in season 2, I think it's the Vanessa Cruz episode, where he decides, after she says, you have to tell me the truth, and he lies straight to her face about the passports because he doesn't want to give up Red. When she tells him goodbye, he realizes, I have a choice here. I have the job or I have Liz. And without any promise of anything in return, he chooses Liz over the job, and that's where you see him actually. Granted, the coming back from Dresden is a huge step for him, where he goes to the feds and confesses to the murder, and potentially could have been, I don't know DC's laws on that, but he would have either been in prison for a very long time, or potentially, the death penalty.
Because Ames was a cop.
Exactly.
So he could have got the death penalty.
And so there, obviously he was choosing Liz over the job to a great degree, but as soon as he was let loose, he went straight back to the major. That's what he did. And
because that's what he does, and that's what Red calls.
Oh, exactly. But when Liz gave him that ultimatum, that's the moment I think it finally clicked with him. Of, I have to make a choice. It's either the job or it's Liz. Which one do I care about more? And he made that choice. And from that point forward, he started moving forward with her. Not with any promise of a relationship at that point, but as a human being, he started making significant strides forward.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, did Red recognize those things, that Tom was at each point choosing Liz? It's not loyalty to him, but it's loyalty to someone that Red appreciates.
I'm not sure. He may have realized it by now. I think that I think we've seen that he's realized that by now, because whenever anything needs done, season 3, Liz is on the run. He doesn't put up a fight when Tom's in the middle of things. When, after Liz, quote unquote, dies, when they need someone to fit the, to do the job in a very, very boxed in time of switching the oil tankers, Tom Keen gets called for that. When it has to do with Liz, when the loyalty is to Liz, within the last season or so, I would say Red is willing to work with him on that, because he knows that Tom will get the job done if it has to do with Liz.
Well, and it started leading with the passing of the gun in the church. But the next time that we see Tom and Red interact, he goes to pick him up in Dresden.
The really funny thing about that I love, because Ressler's sitting there the whole time going, you just let him walk. He just left. What's going on now? And Red's going, it's okay. We delivered our message. We did what we came to do, because Red knows he's coming back. Red never had a question in his mind, no matter how much Tom complained and yelled and screamed about it, and threw a fit, really. Red knew that Tom was coming back, because Red knew where the loyalties lay.
Yes, and one interesting thing about that is that is the first time that Tom actually tells Red that he's using Liz. And so I think that for Red, that was a point where he realizes where a lot of Tom's actions come from.
And that could be. That's a very good point.
Because he says, what do you care? You've been using her. You need her on the outside so you can keep your little task force running. I think that's more or less the gist of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I thought, boy, that is telling Red a lot, because it explains Tom's reactions. Red already knows that he's there because he loves Liz. Now it's telling him why he chose to stay at any cost. Some of them questionable, but he stayed because he distrusted Red and Red's intentions towards Liz. Because I don't think at any point, can you even see this when Red was hiring Tom, goes to the mayor and said, listen, I got a young woman I really love and care for, and I need an operative to care for her. That would be so beyond what Red would do.
I just keep wondering, because he then hired Ezra later, who was also young, attractive, straight, and male.
Yeah, I just like my operative to be gorgeous. Yeah,
I know. It's like he keeps going for this type, and I'm going, Red, sweetheart, bad life choice. You needed
to go for a tough-looking woman. that would have been your
Yeah,
choice.
hire Gina Xanatakis. It'll be fine.
I don't know. She's attractive. You never know.
Yeah, it's always possible.
Yeah. But the funny thing is with that is there, if you remember the way Red was towards Liz welfare at the very beginning with the task force when he didn't know them, it was, remember in the Stewmaker, oh, I don't know, either you let me do things my way or you find whatever is left of Agent King yourselves.
I think a lot of that was put on, to be
Of
honest.
course it is, but it's the same thing that he probably did with Tom.
Oh yeah, it's a manipulation tactic.
But he, by not letting the person know how much he cares for Liz, he has to protect his vulnerability.
I was going to say, but that in a way that also protects Liz, because we saw what happened in the Enzo Garrett episodes where they found out, oh, this is someone he cares about. Look, he came out of the box for her. Suddenly Liz becomes much more valuable to them, and they're willing to take her with them. Because they're not willing to let her go, no matter what Red says. Red cannot talk them out of that. Red can talk himself out of most anything. And the fact that they see that she is a vulnerability is dangerous for her. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think that's why he plays that card.
Exactly. For Tom, it was natural to think, I don't know if this guy really cares about Liz or if he's using Liz for some ultimate purpose.
Well, I think Tom had pieces of information, and I'm sure some of them he found himself. I honestly think that a lot of his digging around that he was doing, quote unquote, for Berlin, it was probably just to see what on earth was going on with this whole situation and try to get a good grasp on where everything fit. Was Liz really in danger? Who is Reddington to her? Well, Reddington could have been anybody to her.
And you have the thing that he told her at the end of the fight in the house, I'm one of the good guys.
Yeah.
Reddington is not who you think. So that, to me, tells me he thought, I love this woman. I'm taking this job because this guy tells me he's going to protect her. He's not out to hurt her. And that is an often overlooked statements of Tom.
No, I think that also goes back to what we saw and heard between the conversation of Tom and Gina in season 3 when they're sitting in the hotel room when he's trying to get her just to let them live in peace. And he says, well, I think the line is, we don't pull people up, we stand back and watch them drown. And I'm tired of hurting people. And so I get the impression that, at least to a degree, I mean, granted, the Major was bringing in children with sociopathic tendencies and, disconnect. I mean, there were certain kids that he was looking for. These aren't kids that are going to join up and go, I want to change the world for the better. But I'm sure quite a few of them had kind of a James Bond sort of outlook towards it. I'm going to be a spy.
Well, now that you mentioned in the same word spies and sociopath, I got to point out, I pointed you towards a book that I found
most I love that book so much.
about I think it's called What Spies and Saints and CEOs can teach us
the wisdom of psychopaths.
Of psychopath. And a lot of people have this thing about, Tom is a sociopath. No, Tom has psychopathic tendencies. And among those are risk-taking, a very clear reading of people, an ability to think on your feet, and it's an ability to not be swayed by emotions in circumstances of high stress. And if you think about it, which other of our favorite character has and capable of horrible things?
We've got Red and Liz.
Exactly.
And Samar. Samar probably borders on that as well.
Because anybody who is, or most people who are in an elite military unit, all have psychopathic tendencies. Otherwise, they will not be able to function. The second that they are faced with a situation that requires calm assessment in a moment of high stress and high emotional value, they will not be able to function. It's same as a surgeon. You want a surgeon that goes, oh my God, my wife is leaving me, I can't do this surgery, or kills you in the middle of the surgery because he has an emotional problem, or you started bleeding and he can't think correctly because he gets all flustered. No, there's sociopathic tendencies doesn't mean a crazy person with no feelings. It just means a person who has in that spectrum is able to function.
Well, we saw a perfect example of it in this past episode with Tom and Nikos.
Oh yes,
I mean, that was such a perfect example of it because he's standing there, and you gotta imagine he probably had some sort of training within St. Regis on intense,
Torturing, yes.
torture,
Yeah.
intense
Torture
interrogation.
101,
Yes,
and then there is
with the
advanced
bunnies and
torture.
the oh, the poor bunnies. That interview just kind of haunts me
Oh
on
my
that.
God, yes.
But anyway, but so that's something that he is aware of how to do, that he's good at doing. I don't think he gets his kicks from it, certainly, but he is good at it. He can get the answers he needs in a collected amount of time. But something
Just like Red.
Absolutely just like
And
Red.
just like Liz.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Liz was perfectly willing to torture people, and Mira was back in season 1.
Exactly.
We saw that in the I think the second episode where the guy broke his leg after Liz ran him over.
Yeah, she says, there's a difference between me and the FBI and the CIA.
She's, putting pressure on the leg.
Oh, that must have been so painful.
Oh, gosh. We have multiple people working through this that can put aside and compartmentalize their emotions and handle the issue at hand. Tom needed that information. He needed the information in a select amount of time because his baby girl was in trouble. His child, that has no ability to protect herself, has been separated from both of her parents and is with a man that's kidnapping her because he has this delusion of kidnapping his own child and becoming a happy family. And so, yes, I mean, that is Tom putting aside everything else and focusing in. The interesting thing, and the fact that this shows growth with him, is the fact that afterwards he connected his actions had caused pain to someone that he is fond of.
Exactly. And I thought it was interesting, too, that in that scene we see something that we also see in Red. The little story, the little smile. He's perfectly charming as he's about to torture someone. We've seen it, that magnificent scene in season 1 with the cigar in the vodka. Yeah, it's
the suspense
that was
is killing me. Yes.
Oh my God, that was such a great scene. I mean, we all love Red doing it.
Or the scene of in season 3, Gregory DeVry. Oh, when he's just going off on that, when he's sitting there and he just starts in on that monologue. And it ends with him stabbing the man.
Yes, another lovely parallel, because it's a few episodes before they had said, "Oh, it takes a hard heart to kill a man with a knife," and there's
Red.
Exactly, there is Red killing Caligari, and he had killed he had stabbed the Russian ambassador.
I don't think Red has a hard heart. I think he, like we were just talking about, he compartmentalizes. He does what he has to do at the moment.
Exactly.
And he doesn't let the emotions get to him that would stop him from that.
No, he's
a means to the end.
Exactly. And the next one that we see, Tom and Red, it's an interesting take on all that. It's the yo-yo now go away when he goes to the motel room and Tom is there.
Yes, following Dresden, when Tom does come back after Red had left him in Dresden, going, basically, he'll be here. It'll be fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I both love and hate that scene so much because, as an adult daughter, if my father came to me and said that, there would be all sorts of conversation between us on the appropriateness of that. Of, did I not make myself clear? He's back in your life. It's the way
he 12-year-old, like
exactly. I mean that is the teenager.
I told you not to see.
Exactly. That's what you say to a teenager who is still under your roof. A grown man does not, and especially because there is a very, very valid chance. I mean, the chances are getting slimmer and slimmer that Red is biologically related to Liz.
But he functions as a father. So
exactly. But
it's a moot point.
But regardless, he has spent years away from her. He is not her dad. Sam was her dad. And so to come in and say that and to have that approach to her, I thought was highly inappropriate on his end. But that's Red in his control mode. He has to control everything.
There is a point in that scene that I love, which is when he says, you have to imagine what your life could be without him. And Liz says, I don't have to imagine. And Red is so satisfied because he thinks she's saying, oh, it will be so much better. But this is after the front. And she's already been missing Tom. So
she's been missing
his answer...
him. And when you look back, it's really interesting. It's one of the things that I really looked for in the rewatch. Season 1B through really through about throughout 3A. When she and Tom don't spend a lot of time together, when they're emotionally apart, physically apart, etc., because while they have the moment on the boat in the season 2 finale, they're not really back together. I mean, she
They,
expects him to go chase his dream. They're not really back together. They don't get back together until 3B. But that's when she starts smiling again. That lovely smile. Megan has a gorgeous smile. And you start seeing it more and more, and it just picks up. No matter what kind of chaos is going on, she still has those moments where she is just happy.
yes, and that they do have the conversation in the comic, where in the comic book when they are talking in Paris, and they have that lovely conversation about the Christmas thing and how the kids made a Christmas ornament. It's a lovely conversation.
Oh, I love that one, yes. But no, you're right. You called it a yo-yo effect, and it really is. It's Red. Red loves to bring people into Liz's life, Sam, Tom, etc., etc. He brings people in, he uses them for what he wants, and then he pushes them aside. When Sam had done his use and he was about to spill secrets, Sam's dead. When Tom has done his use, when he's come in and, saved Liz and fessed up to the murder of Eugene Ames, Red wants him gone. He only wants people there on his terms, not on Liz's, even though they are people that are affecting Liz's life directly. They're there on, Red wants them there on Red's terms. And I think that's one of the things that he dislikes most about Tom, is that Tom doesn't put up with that. He's the wild card in a fairly predictable group of people.
Red can predict everybody except a very few people, and Tom is one of them.
Yeah, with the exception of Tom's loyalties lie with Liz. That's the only thing you can count on, is that Tom's loyalties lie with Liz and now Agnes.
I can imagine when he fired Tom, and he fully expected that the fear that he instilled in people would keep Tom away, and nope. Tom was still there. Could you imagine?
Did Sam call him one day and go, "So, you're going to figure this out sooner or later, so it might as well come from me"? Tom kind of proposed to Liz. Liz accepted. The wedding's set from a month from now. Please don't kill my future son-in-law. She really does love him.
Yeah, I don't know that Tom and Red spoke. I think.
Oh no, I'm saying Sam.
Yeah.
Like if Sam made that
sorry.
call.
Yes.
Yeah, if Sam made that call of, my daughter really truly loves this man, please do not put a bullet in his head at the altar.
I think June was a watcher.
I think they both could have been. I could imagine them both having been in on it.
Yeah, I think that she was Red's watcher, keeping an eye on everything and making sure that everything was done according to his wishes. Mm-hmm. Not narcissistic at all, not controlling. Nope, not a Red.
I'm sorry, was that sarcasm there?
Oh, really? Did it come across?
So okay, we're moving down. The motel room was such an interesting
warehouse. That is a scene that in Tom and Red's relationship is monumental.
Oh, it was amazing. And it was a huge growth on Tom's point, because Tom had just fessed up to everything that should have terrified him. He just chose Liz over Red, over the job, over everything that he's ever known, all that has ever produced anything in his life. I mean, where everyone else had pushed him aside and said he wasn't worth anything, Bud picked him up and said, what they're saying is going to keep you down, I'm going to use to pull you up. And then promptly, in a way, does. In a very twisted, warped way, does. And so Tom has just turned his back on all of that for Liz, without any promise of anything going forward.
Exactly.
And then she shows up on his doorstep with Raymond Reddington hooked up to all these machines and says, I didn't have anywhere else to go, echoing exactly what he said when he showed up at her motel and she told him to get out.
Yes, and he still says, okay, go in there, exactly. And tells her this is not for him, this is for you. But then he goes to Red. And Red on drugs, Red out of surgery is still scary Red.
Loopy Red.
Yep, but it's still scary.
Oh. Well, I mean, the man got a bullet pulled out of his lung, and like 2 or 3 hours later was crawling over to get a gun to fight back against the cabal.
Exactly.
Raymond Reddington is a badass. I'm willing to admit this.
He is. He certainly is. And Tom knows what is to be shot. He knows what kind of pain it is. And yet there they are, and he tells Red that he said to Liz, he explained everything to Liz, and he's trying to fix it, and he's done with everything. And I think at that
I
point,
loved that line of him talking about the moment at the hospital and saying, and all I could think of was nobody has hurt Liz like you have. It's not verbatim, but it was something along those. No one's hurt Liz as much as you.
she's here because of you. And I think that that is the second time that Tom has purposely told Red, you are the cause of his troubles. And that's him and Kate telling him the same thing. That is the second thing that the second parallel that we can see between Kate and Tom.
And that may have been what caused Kate to trust Tom, is that understanding there of, we both see him for what he is. Obviously, Kate has a whole lot more loyalty to Red than Tom does. I mean,
the one thing that I always thought is, what had happened if Red, instead of saying, you're fired, would have said, okay, great. How about if you and I work together and you keep Liz safe?
His life would have been so much easier.
And I mean, a lot of this, because most of this happened was because Red firing Tom. And firing him was not a guarantee that he was going to get out of Liz's life. It would have been smarter.
I think that Red thought it was, because he was looking at basically this perfect soldier that Bud handed him the file for. Because I really think that Red didn't know much about Tom at the time past the file that the Major handed him. Bud handed him a file and said, this is my best operative. This is my recommendation. He's and did not tell him his name was Jacob Phelps, because Red continuously refers to him as Tom Keene.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that he knew what Tom thought was his name. I mean, obviously we've found out since that Christopher Hargrave is actually his birth name. But the name that he went by, when he was young, that was on all of his records, et cetera, et cetera. Red didn't know that. So I don't think Red knew anything past his file. And so he's looking at this, and these are the kind of kids that come out of St. Regis. These are the kind of operatives that Bill McCready produces. And so with that scenario in place, you have any other person through that program, as soon as they were fired, who's going to go and be so emotionally attached that they're going to risk their life for it. I think that that's what Red was putting out there. You're fired, so basically, if you stick around, you're dead, And if it had just been physical attraction, a moment of getting too deep into the cover, et cetera, Tom would have left. At that point, when it was his life or a chance to love Liz, anybody that was not as head over heels as he is, as deeply in love as he is, would have walked.
Yeah. But my thought was, if at that point Red had acted differently, Tom would have had the kind of loyalty that Red wanted.
Oh, absolutely. I just don't think Red realized he was that type of person. And at this point, they're so far beyond it that there's almost no point.
Yeah. But then the next time they see them, after that, because if you realize they've been all this time, this is at the beginning of the last time they speak is at the when Red has been shot, and the next time they're already at the end of halfway through season 4 when they got the conversation of season 3 of "You will not marry her again,"
which was such an interesting parallel to "You will not see her again."
Mm-hmm. Now it's not "You will not marry her again," and I think the marriage itself is something that upset him. I think that it's at that point it's not "You will not see her, you will not leave her," it's just "You will not marry her." And I do wonder sometimes if it was about the legal consequences of marriages, which involve transfer of property and right of determining certain things.
It could have been. And Red said that he already knew that Liz was pregnant. It's a possibility that he did.
True.
Marriage makes it more difficult to leave, to just up and leave. And so, there would have been another divorce of some sort. They didn't get divorced the first time it was an annulment, but, there would have had to have been legal consequences to break that marriage off.
But even if they were having a child, being married or not doesn't make any difference to the child or the rights of the father.
That's true. That's true.
But it's certainly interesting because that scene where he says "You will not marry again," and you see that Tom has no fear. He's like, "What? because
Oh,
I
he
didn't
just
have
channels the
dad's
snark
permission.
there. I
Yeah.
love it.
And you know, with my crazy theory of maybe Red being Tom's father, giving them enormous amounts of parallels that we've been seeing, that would take a whole different meaning there.
Oh,
That
yeah.
you didn't ask daddy's permission. I didn't ask daddy's permission. It would be lovely, but you know, that's a crazy theory. In that, from there on, we go to the wedding.
Yeah, and even, I mean, because before the wedding, he's sitting there and telling Liz, Tom hasn't changed, you know, he's a criminal, which I found so ironic with the concierge of crime saying, he's a criminal, you can't marry
Like
him.
me.
And
You
I
can
think that's
marry him.
really what it
He's
was coming down
violent.
to.
Oh, like me.
I mean, because
He's
he told Liz in the season 2 finale, I didn't want you to be like me. And so I think that's part of it, is that he doesn't want Liz connected to that. He still has this idea of, somehow, some way I'm going to get you your fantasy. He just doesn't want to realize, et cetera, that Tom is now pretty cemented as part of that. He's that husband on the other side of that child walking through the park. Liz has repeated that over and over and over again. Over and over again, we've seen that he has been in that slot for this family, this fantasy of a family that she wants and that she's always wanted, that he fulfills that for her.
yeah, and I think that a lot of that fantasy of Liz, it's never going to happen. It's just never going to happen.
Well, I think they're going to find their own
Their own
version of
normal.
normal. John Bokenkamp has said that we're not exactly what you were just saying. They're not going to get the picket fence, which makes sense. I mean, they're the children of spies, and they are in a world of chaos. They're never going to have that
traumatic childhoods.
Yeah, and so, but they can find their own version of normal for them that keeps Agnes safe, that allows them to balance, you know, life at home and life in their various jobs. I have a lot of faith in that, especially with redemption coming, with them being able to pull that off. But that's off topic. And
I think that safety, it's a relative concept for people like
very
them.
much so. And they are
it's
people
not,
like
it's
them.
not like people, oh, you know what, my kid, you know, the greatest danger to my kid will come from, I don't know, drugs at school. This is people that because of who they are, the degree of danger in their life will be terrible. And I think that is the reason why Red insisted on Liz taking her to Wu-Jing, taking her to all these dangerous missions, because it was a training for the real life that she could have, not the fantasy.
Yeah, that's very true. He was preparing her for it because while I think Red would like her to have that, he also knows the reality is he's been fighting this for 20 years, and that once her name came out as Masha Rostova, she was stuck in it. And I think she was stuck in it before that, and that's the reason he showed up. I mean, it was just a matter of time.
And you and I have talked a lot about how we see Liz. We do not see Liz as being a little damsel in distress. We do not see her as this like by the book agent that got misled down the dark path by this couple of criminals.
Oh no, I think that if anything, the face that she was putting on was the little innocent one we saw in the pilot. That she thought Tom was naive and innocent, and so she downplayed her own dark moments. But you've got those comments like, before you throw the coffee cup at me.
Exactly.
I mean, little things
You're
that
gonna do whatever you do because you always do.
Yeah, exactly. Little things that show that she's always had a violent temper. And honestly, when you start looking at those things, depending on how violent it got, did she really think that her, elementary school teacher husband had no, that he was just totally cool with this? I mean, he was either really beaten down or there was something more to him. And I thought that in the Zamani, in the pilot episode with Zamani, when he was sitting there and when she's freaking out, he's looking at her and going, no, don't. He's calm. He's collected. And I'm going, what's the matter with you? There's more to you.
I knew there was more to Tom the second he flashed that badge. That to me was just such a nice thing.
I had heard rumors because I came in so late, and the show was airing season 2 when I started watching the pilot, and so I mean I had heard rumors that Tom was more than he appeared, but as soon as I saw him with Samani, I'm going, I don't know who you are. Maybe you're CIA. I don't know. But dude, you were not an elementary school
Yeah,
teacher.
and there is a lot more in that darkness. I mean, if you look at first her own self assessment, her own profile of
Oh,
herself,
absolutely.
she
Absolutely.
says, she's not saying I'm a nice naive young woman. No, she's not.
She
The
knows
other
very
thing,
well.
and she had lied to the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
She had not said, she always grew up with this thing that, oh, your father was a career criminal who abandoned you and your mother died of weakness and
She
shame.
didn't flinch in front of Red when he said that, but then she got angry with
Oh
Ressler and
yeah.
Cooper saying,
Oh,
"Who
that's
told
a
him
cover
this?"
up. It's a cover up. I thought that was a cover up to the nth. That was her getting to, okay, I gotta deflect the attention
Yeah.
from that, because wrestlers said, wait a minute, how come your father's criminal record? Because they don't know she's adopted. They don't know that story
Yeah.
that she's being told. Yet she didn't say any of this to the FBI. And wrestlers said, wait a minute, but how come your father's criminal record is not showing on your record? Of course, because she never said anything. She never said anything about grifting or about robbing drugstores or anything.
No, absolutely. Liz is much more of a gray character than she's never been squeaky clean.
No,
Not
she lies,
since
and
she
then
walked
she
onto the
she
pilot.
she found the passports and the gun and the money, and she
Yeah.
doesn't say anything to the FBI
Oh no,
or to Tom.
and Red is well aware that that's the route she's going to take because she says, "Well, there may be another option." To
Exactly.
basically to research it herself because he knows that's what she's going to do. Because that is Liz. That is what she does, is that she takes matters into her own hands. It's why I'm really hoping for the next episodes coming up on Thursday. I mean, we've seen the tagline is Tom takes things into his own hands, which of course he is. I mean, it's Tom. But I'm really hoping he's going to do it with Liz going, Red's not helping us. The FBI is working through red tape. So, honey, what are we doing about this?
And a lot of a very interesting thing when we compare those two characters with Red is that you see those tendencies Red has. It's my way or the highway, and loyalty is defined of what I want,
Mm-hmm.
as I want, when I want it. And if you look at what Liz says, that those first minutes when you see her, besides below that level of, oh, how sweet they are, what a young couple, what a delightful thing, and the banter and all that, you realize what is Liz saying? You cannot take the car. I need the car.
Oh,
Um,
she runs over him. I mean,
then
I think he's
it's like,
happy to
am I
let her,
standing
but
in dog pee? Did you take the dog out? And we're out of milk. Like, it's a princess. It's like she's demanding, and
Liz is high maintenance.
oh yeah, I mean, she's really have narcissistic tendencies, and she knows it. She even says it and acts them, and they're very correct and true. And I think the difference between a lot of the fans is that we tend to see her list like that. We don't see a damsel in distress, a little Y ingenue that got stuck in between these two guys.
Something beautiful about that, and you know me, I come from a shipper's point of view, and I admit that wholeheartedly. But I do try to see things fairly balanced, and I've been told that I manage that for the most
You
part.
do, you do.
As I overflowed Tumblr this afternoon with Keen Squared stuff, all the fluff. But when Tom was just the elementary school teacher to her, he let her run him over. There was no stop. Let's talk about that. There was no pushback. Absolutely no pushback. He was just kind of milquetoast to her, and once everything came out and they cemented their relationship on truth, we started moving in on 3B. Even before they became as solid as they were towards the end of the season, when after they found out she was pregnant, et cetera, he pushed back more. There was much more of that. I mean, even at the adoption, before she found out about him, he was, oh god, the heartbreak on that man's face, finding out that the child that he thought, I mean, because you have to imagine that Jacob Phelps, who had been denied a home throughout his childhood, the only home willing to accept him long term was St. Regis.
Hmm.
And And suddenly he had a chance with a woman that he loved to build a family that he never knew he had, that he wanted. And she pulls that out without even giving him a chance to argue it. It's just, we are doing this because I can't do it. I am making a choice for us because of my feelings, and you don't get a say in it. She started doing it again with Agnes, when she got pregnant, and he goes, no, I have a say in this. And I got very frustrated in the fandom because there was a general, consensus on parts of the fandom. I'm sure it wasn't fandom-wide. I hope it wasn't fandom-wide. But people saying, well, he doesn't have a say. It's her body, her say. And I said, he's still the father. He still has rights. And legally
he has rights.
And so, but I was so proud of him to push back on that because she needs that. Liz needs that in her life. She doesn't need someone that will become her doormat because she will run them over. She needs someone that is willing to go, no, babe, let's stop and think about this. And be patient enough with her as well to walk her through it. And to handle her narcissistic tendencies, but be able to balance that with another point of view. And Tom does a great job with her on that. And once they got the truth between them, they were able to start approaching things like that.
And an interesting, come back from that and consequence of that is when they're in the church and you see that Red, who seconds before was telling Liz about not marrying him, and the first thing he does is give Tom a gun to get her out of here.
Get her out of the way. Get her out of the way, Tom. Tom, get her out of here. Red could have very easily pulled Liz out and taken the car himself. He doesn't. He says, Tom, get her out of here. He has just like Dresden, he has no question in his mind that Tom will risk his life, his very life, to save her.
Exactly. And it's a very interesting thing. And that passing of the gun to me, in other places, it would be the passing of, I don't know, the family Bible or something of the sort. Here is the gun. They're spies. It's, passing on the gun mean,
giving her away. It's giving her away at the altar.
Yeah, there you go. Here's my filial figure and the gun to protect her.
Oh, that's about what it boiled down to.
Yeah, just go do your thing.
And from that point forward, he really does start treating Tom like a son-in-law. You really do start seeing the shift of very much how Dom approaches Red.
Yep. It's a very similar relationship, including when they're in the warehouse and Agnes has been born, and Liz tells Red to go away, and it's Tom who actually does a little white lie to safeguard his feelings.
She's on a lot of drugs. Just give her a break. Yeah, no, I loved that scene, and Red just kind of shrugs it off like, okay. And Liz yells at him.
And then, he comes back and tells her, it's a good name and you'll learn. And you can see, and that was one of my favorite scenes of the entire Blacklist, is that scene with Tom and Red and Agnes. And he's, in the midst of this pain, and he just collapsed and his world just change. In there they are, these two men with an uneasy relationship, very similar in many things, and united because there is this little girl in between them that has nobody else in the world but them, according to what Red feels and what we know at that time.
Well, I thought it was fascinating that of all the people that Red could have sent to tell Tom Liz had passed away, he went himself.
Yes.
He chose to go himself. Like you just said, amidst of all the pain, he took it upon himself. He didn't send Bass. He didn't send Mbaye. He didn't send Mr. Kaplan. He went himself alone. We don't see anybody else really walk in with him. And goes in and says, and has that conversation. I mean, and you could say part of it was to see Agnes, but it was a very strange respect thing. I mean, that was one of the very few moments that we see respect from Red geared towards Tom.
Yes. That remains one of my favorite scenes. And from there on, we go from there to all these things and I found interesting because when we contrast the way Liz was at the beginning, she wasn't very skilled with Red in asking, in setting boundaries, in asking for things in return, even though she starts doing it eventually and say, well, I give you my information or whatever you need if you give me an answer. But Tom immediately pushes back. He's like, this is not how it works. You let me do this and then let you be in Agnes' life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because Tom comes from that world. He really does. And he knows more what to expect. And granted, Liz has been learning about that world, but Tom's grown up in it. It's second nature to him. What was very interesting, I'm still weighing back and forth and looking at all the pieces, and I just don't, I feel like it's a puzzle that has multiple missing pieces out of it. Like those huge pieces that you need, you know, with why Red, he told Tom that he had never told Tom that Scotty was his mother, because he had a child to raise, and that Scotty Hardgrave had a lot of secrets that included Tom that could put both Tom and Agnes in danger. That was his reasoning for not telling Tom that Scotty was his mother. But as soon as Tom was about to go in and put a bullet in Scotty's head, he calls him, tells him, don't do this, and that's the reason he gives him, which is somewhat understandable. That's kind of a last-ditch effort of, you're going to regret this. You know, you're the man raising Agnes. You need to keep your conscience somewhat clear, you know, granted.
And also to be able to come back. And that's what makes me crazy about that scene that deleted is when Red says, what gives me the power if it doesn't matter if I don't come back. Yeah. I don't fear anything. Nothing gets affected if I'm not around. There's no little girl at home waiting for me, and you're no longer that.
Exactly. And so, and to be fair, if he had shot Scotty Hargrave in her office after Trey walking her up there, how far would that have been to stretch? Tom Keen's the murderer, you know?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I mean, and granted, Tom probably would have taken Agnes at that point and gone immediately to Cuba, but that's not how it worked out. But what was interesting, what I found, what I'm still battling with, and I think when Redemption airs, we'll get more information on it. Red said that the reason that he didn't tell him was because of all the secrets and the dangers to Tom and Agnes. But as soon as he did tell him that, he started pushing. Well, aren't you looking for answers about your mother? Why wouldn't you do this instead of trying to help us with Kirk? Stop helping us with Kirk. Go look into Scotty Hargrave. You know, is Scotty just a lesser danger? Are her dangers a lesser danger than Kirk is? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, but he starts trying to manipulate Tom into that direction. And obviously Tom's looking at him like, I halfway wrote the book on manipulation, dude. You're not getting anywhere with me.
That's an interesting thing. I didn't think about it. He wanted Tom out of the way, out of Kirk's way.
He did, but why send him into something dangerous like that? I mean, is it so much? Is Scotty such a lesser danger than Kirk in Red's eyes that it's the lesser of two evils? Basically, is what I'm wondering.
Well, I wonder what those secrets might be, and that might be
that's going to be the key, is finding the secrets. Yeah, and we'll find that out with Redemption.
And finally, in this last episode, it's such a departure for Red and Tom that when Tom arrives and they're in the car, there is no, well, you did that, nothing. It's just, get Mr. Kaplan out. We don't have Liz. Do you have Agnes? It's just work. It's like that.
Yeah, they just pick up where as if they had been in this from the get-go together.
Yeah, it's almost a continuity, a continual from the part where he calls and says, "Don't go to the meeting with Scotty because and then it's got kill or capture, kill. It's a peace offering. It was just like bam, bam, bam. We're into this routine here.
Yeah, and I love it when they work together like that. I really do. And if anybody follows my Tumblr, you'll see how very, very much I've been struggling with how angry I am at Red right now. I have multiple reasons I'm angry, including the whole Kaplan issue. But part of it has to do with the way he reacted to Tom, and in part because of the way he reacted to Tom, the way he was reacting to Liz.
See, I saw that reaction in the plane. Is that the one you're talking about?
It is, but the thing is, and I know you see it as a very parental sort of reaction, and I understand that. But the thing is, as of right now, as of what we know, and unless Red has been lying, and even if Red was lying the whole time and he is biologically Liz's father, that doesn't matter. Tom is Agnes's father, Liz is Agnes's mother. Those are the two people that are responsible for that little girl's well-being. To go and admonish him when his child is missing, his wife is missing, admonishing him for doing everything he could to, in his power, protect his little girl. It was so childish. I got so angry at him at that scene, and I was hoping, because I saw it as a clip, I was hoping there'd be more to it, and then there wasn't. It was just Red. It kind of reminded me, you remember when Wrestler said, I beat you? That really childish, and I love Wrest. I mean, to anybody that's listening, you guys know how much I adore Wrestler. It's like this one of two comments I have ever thoroughly hated from him.
But that comment from Red towards Tom and Kate to me didn't read at all like that. It read like you maybe it's something you can not do. And you considering that he has always said, the major only takes superior intelligence, kids of superior intelligence. He's not ever going to say Tom is stupid. He just doesn't have the wisdom because it comes with age. I think it was a jab at Kate that has both and didn't get that.
But I am very much of the opinion that as much as Red loves Agnes, and I don't question at all that he doesn't have any right to dictate how she's protected.
Oh, well, we don't know because we don't know the whole story. I am always whenever we have seen questioning Red's reasons for acting, we end up, when we hear the part of the story, a bit more of the story, is like, oh, okay. So I am a little reluctant this time to say, well, you weren't acting this way or that way. But I don't know, because I don't know what reasons Red has to act the way he does. I have a theory that Katerina is alive, that he knows where it is. And if he reveals too much, then he puts Katerina at danger. If he reveals too little, then puts Liz at danger. And he's managing that conundrum the best way he can.
Oh, I think he's doing the best he knows how. I do not disagree with that at all. I think Red is coming at it the best way he knows how, but I also believe that he approaches it in a very unhealthy sort of fashion. And I feel like that word gets tossed around a lot, so I almost hate using that one. But he's doing the best he knows how, but it really bothered me the way he went about it. And that's an entirely emotional reaction to it. I mean, That's just the initial, and it stuck with me, reaction. But it's not like he sat there and said, you got yourself into this, good luck. I mean, he's still looking for Agnes. He's still giving his all for Agnes and for Liz, regardless of how angry he is. So, I mean, you have to give him that. I mean, Red does truly care about these people. And, he shot Mr. Kaplan at the end of the episode. He never once raised a gun to Tom the entire time, no matter how much he might blame him for it.
Well, it's a father of a child he cares about.
And that's true. Yeah, I'm saying I have to give Red that. I mean, because Kirk's first reaction was, bring me the child, kill the father.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so going into to Tom and Red, and how Red reacts to Tom in Little Nikos's bail spawn area and during the surgery. When Red walks in, it's such an interesting moment that he says, I mean, because he's basically been encouraging Kate in the idea that he's going to torture her friend if she cannot get her friend to speak. Kate, I'm giving you first go. If you can't do it, I'm torturing him. And she goes in and she tries, and then when she says, Reddington is going to kill you, he walks in and says, I'm not going to do that. You're loyal. I respect loyalty. But I'm surrounded by people who don't, which is, yet again, another jab at Tom for not being loyal, which was interesting. Mm-hmm. He took the moment to take that very small jab at him of, this guy over here behind me, he doesn't care about loyalty. Which is...
No, just that woman there.
Yeah. She doesn't care about loyalty. He doesn't care about loyalty. I'm the only person in this room that cares about loyalty. You and me, Nikos, we're on the same side here. It's basically what Red was saying.
I also looked it up like, well, now you're a father, Tom, so you get to do your own torturing. It's a rite of passage.
And it could be back to that passing the gun, the spy.
Yeah, hey,
spy
I
passage.
respect you. You're a father now. You stay with your daughter and you let me go on the dangerous missions, and you get to do your own torturing.
You get to bloody your own hands. This is not on me. I think it's also a way that he put, I think it had so many layers to the situation. He put a wedge between, because we saw Tom and Kate have a bond of sorts in the plane.
Yes.
I want to touch on that later with the parallels between Kate and Tom. But Reddington sat there and watched him forgive Kate for what Red is blaming Kate for putting Agnes in danger. Tom, who is the little girl's father, is saying, this is not your fault. Things went sideways. This is not your fault. And you know what? Even more than that, I would do it again. And I think that Red sees that there is not a bond particularly, but an alliance there that he needs to.
And you think that he was trying to wedge to make it.
I do. I think that was one level of it. And by saying, I'm not the one torturing your friend, Tom Keen is. That's a way of doing that. And he knew Tom was going to go to the lengths that he needed to because Agnes's life is in danger. Like we were talking about earlier, there are two things you can rely on Tom for. His loyalty to Liz and now his loyalty to Agnes. He's going to put that above any other loyalties. He may like the task force. His family comes first. He may like Kate. His family's still going to come first.
And that is something exactly like Red.
Oh, absolutely. And you would think Red would respect that. And
he may.
On a level, maybe. I don't think he wants to.
I don't think he wants to respect Tom, but I do see a change in his attitude towards Tom, and I think that, there may be a reluctant one. It's having shades of him and Dom. I don't necessarily like you, but there are things that I respect you, and we're family, so.
Yeah, and you and I've talked about off the podcast before that I'm terrified that we're working towards a situation which Red may not survive the final finale. That may be his great redemption, is that he gives his life for Liz and her family and her fantasy. And that's one of my fears. As a fan of redemption arcs, I know that's a route that it takes sometimes.
I have a feeling that it, the issue, I don't know if you read all the comics, but in The Gambler, before he kills himself, Sebastian Royce tells Red that trusting Liz is a gamble, and that one day he might come to regret that. And, and then he bets his own life and plays Russian roulette, and it's dead. But it was interesting because it's a foreshadowing of sorts. That and I think what Rostov may try to do is to get Liz to kill Red, because that would be like double death.
Oh, absolutely. And the pain that would cause Red to have the little girl that he's been trying to save her whole life turn around and attack him in that way. I mean, this is not just a pen to the neck. This is that, yes, I could definitely see Kirk trying to do that. It would be if Liz would or not. Would be the question. But yeah, I found it very interesting that Red had Tom do that. That was an interesting situation there.
It's probably like he's always operating so many levels that I think that it was like the best choice he could do. If he did it himself, it would be so crude to Kate that probably it would just take off a lot of that.
That's not his forte. He said that Brimley is his torturer. Kate is his cleaner. He's not. Red's certainly a killer, but he's not. He's very.
He knows
his is more psychological torture. His is more manipulation, psychological torture.
Oh,
than his
that fantastic scene with Mato where he says, "Oh, I know you're not afraid of pain or death. No, spending eternity in a box, yeah."
And Craig, Christopher, what did he go by? What was his, Christopher? Malley, thank you. I mean, they didn't bring Brimley in on that, but there was a lot. I mean, he brought his mother out. That's, Red went dark there. But that's what he does.
You didn't threaten her. Just show her.
Oh no, I know, and that's Red's that is Red's forte. Red went in there, he assessed the situation, he knew what it was going to take, and he said, "Tom, your turn." And so I think it was a lot of different levels. The reason he chose Tom for that.
It'd be interesting if they give us some deleted scenes about that episode in the DVD. That would be really interesting.
I hope it's a commentary of Bokenkamp, Eisendrath and Bokenkamp commentary. That's what I'm cheering for.
And then from there on, I guess that goes on that last episode until the fact that then we go into Red, because this is the first time then Red is actually laying out on Liz, and he doesn't get out of the car. he gives her that sideways glance.
Oh, that
And
said
Liz is
so
looking
much.
at him, and he just drives off.
It's like it's that look of, I can't trust myself with what I will say or do around you. Like, I don't think that he would ever attack Liz, physically. Like, he would not shoot her like he shot Kate. But the things he might say, I don't think he would have been in control of himself. He was so hurt and so... And he has such an inability to step out of himself in those moments that...
And he failed, too.
Oh, and he did. And once again, layered Red. So many layers to everything he does. There's never a simple answer with Raymond Reddington. And that's one of the beautiful things about him. And
There are two characters that say that.
Yeah, that's fair. There's actually three, because, Liz is very much that way as well.
No. Two characters that say that to Redding specifically. Ansel Garrick says, I know you're going to say that with you, everything is more complicated than meets the eye or something like that. And then Marvin Gerard, his lawyer, says, now you're going to go into how with you, everything is more complicated. There is more than meets the eye. So two characters have said that about Red, and two characters who know him well. So I think you're onto something.
I mean, it's just him. We were talking about, if we finished up Red and Red's reaction to Liz. And
I think there is so much in there. He is so hurt.
He is. Yes, absolutely.
He's so hurt. He's so angry. And at the same time, I'm concerned that he has to understand that she's playing with less than half the deck.
Yeah, he has to think about it on all levels himself. He can't just play all levels. He has to think about other people's levels as well. And she's lived her entire life. When you have gaps in your history, people have memories from 4 years old and before. And that's an interesting parallel between she and Tom, that, he apparently doesn't have any memories before his abduction at 3 years old, which he should have at least spotty memories. That, these people...
And I was thinking that maybe the only thing is when he was throttling Scotty, there was a point where he stopped, and you thought it was about,
Right.
You saw that he was trying to be a better man, and he stopped himself.
Yeah.
I saw in that same scene, there was something that triggered that reaction, and he stopped himself. Like there was something he saw. There was something in the eyes, a little adjustment there that was not just about, oh, I can't do that. I can't kill this woman. Yes, there was something about looking in her eyes that got him to stop. And I did wonder, did he get a memory? You would remember possible. Your mother's eyes, or he would just trigger something there.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible, and it's possible that it's both. The once again, we have very, very layered characters. Like we were saying, James is working on an entirely different level, but Ryan is just, the fact that he gets to work with James is fantastic for him, because he is such a talented actor. He really is. I just take 5 seconds to give kudos to actors. I always love to brag on the writers, because I am a writer, and so that's, those are my people there.
From the actors to each one of the actors, there's no actors from the main cast to their invited actors. There is nobody in the Blacklist that is less than spectacular, and the production team as well, because a lot of this is production.
It's all made on movie level expertise. It's impressive that they put together as much as they put together in such a short period of time. Learning what I have about watching the behind the scenes and such, those people are impressive. Like they cannot receive enough praise. Mm-hmm. They really can't. And it's like, I know I've ragged on them about continuity before, but every time I learn something new, I have a new level of respect for them, and it will continue to go deeper as I learn more. I know.
Yeah, that's what I used to get upset about some things, and now I realize, wait a minute, how about if I assume first that they're right, and see if I find pieces that make it fit before going into and saying, oh, they're wrong and they don't know what they're doing.
So much more when you go at it from that level. You find out how much more you enjoy it. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the rest that we have to talk about is the reaction of the rest of the team to Liz and the parallels between Kate and Tom.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to touch first on the parallels between the rest of the team to Tom and Liz?
Okay, do you want to do
Let's
team?
start with wrestler.
Okay, let's do the team first then. So reactions first, and then we'll go into the parallels. Wrestler was it was so great.
I thought that the reaction from the very beginning of Wrestler was spectacular because it's coming from the there is a point of view of a shipper, which is, is a friend or whatever it is. For me, is about this Wrestler has been trying to get Liz out of the darkness of Red. And I think that for him, when he realized the reason he did that was to get away from Red, was like, okay, so I haven't lost Liz. And that to me was important. Mm-hmm. And then when he sees her, he may be angry at her, but I think Wrestler, this is one, and the thing that I love about Wrestler is sometimes he acts straight out of a place in his heart. It doesn't filter through
and that
what
very
he
much
think is right and what he thinks he should do or shouldn't do, or the law or this or that. He goes straight from his heart, and that was his friend. It was in pain. The daughter was missing, and he just hugged her.
And something that I think that, I mean, it's pretty well fandom accepted from what I've been able to tell. And I mean, it's never been absolutely, set in canon, but that Wrestler most likely lost a child when he lost Audrey. That you see him looking at that pregnancy test there,
mm-hmm.
and
he closes his eyes in extreme.
Yeah, I mean, so I really think that. I mean, most people that I've ever talked to have accepted that he lost a child that day, as well as the love of his life. And so he's sitting there, and I personally come at this that Wrestler is incredibly close to Liz, whether it's visible or not. Yeah, I mean, he keeps things a lot. He keeps a lot of his emotions close to his chest. I think they are very close. I think they're good friends, both professionally and, I mean, she's the one that he went to when things were happening with Tom, when she said, I didn't have anywhere else to go moment. So I think that they're very close on many different levels. Like I said, I don't personally ship them, but I am very much a fan of their partnership and their friendship. And here is this friend of his that in season 3A, he confessed to Aram that he was terrified that he'd lost her when she faked her death in 3A. And then we move into 3B where she does, he really does think for more than 5 seconds that he's lost her. They carry her casket out, they bury her, they go to her funeral, they visit her child, they track down her murderer. They've gone through all of this. He finds out she's really alive. And I think his joy overtakes his anger. And he goes, and then Samar comes through that comm and says, Agnes is not here. And for him, for his friend, he is reliving this, that her child is gone. But
yeah,
for
any
Liz,
anger that he may have had at Liz dissolves in that
away.
moment.
Yes. But for him, he's going, she's gone, but we can save her. I don't want to say he has a hero complex. I don't think Russ has a hero complex, but he does fill that role to an extent. He's a one-man Justice League. Yes, I love our one-man Justice League. But he very much fills that role. That he is the character that does not... He's on the outskirts of the gray. I mean, he delves into the gray a little bit, but he's on the lighter end of the gray, of the spectrum here. And he wants, like you've said before, he wants to save Liz, and now he wants to save Agnes. That he has this chance. I could see that with him. That it becomes incredibly personal to him. He has the chance. He couldn't save his own child. He couldn't save he couldn't save Audrey. He couldn't save their child. He can save Agnes, and that's something he can take control of, and he can do for Liz.
And he has a relationship with Red that is it's very complex and interesting because he said it to Liz, it's a question of, it's not that makes it right, but there are a lot of people that have been saved because of what Red does. And I think from the point of view when he's on the, my rubber banding theory, he expands and then he contracts. And when he's expanding, that's as far as he will go, is understanding that Red, however hated it is, because Red was an intelligent officer that turned, traitor. And that is like a marking, like a worse marking. This is the man who's a traitor who betrayed his country, not just a person, but his entire country. And for him, I think that creates wrestler have suffered a shock with Red.
He's conflicted with Red because there are good things
shock.
that come from a bad man. And for Wrestler, he wants to see good things come from good people.
Yeah, in his book, criminals don't go to hotels and tell them to tip people. Yes. They don't.
The government does not tip for concierge of crime.
Yeah, they don't hand him $3 million for him to burn, while having a lot of fun with Jabari in Cameroon. They don't do that, and yet here he's saving people because of information Red gives them. So I think that conflicts enormously with his values, and yet he's going ahead. He's not saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to resign from this task force because I can't work with you. Right. So it's an interesting.
Red also saved his life at one point. I think that was a big turning point for Red and Ress, was when Red saved his life. It was such a bizarre thing for Wrestler because he knew why he was saving Red's life. Oh, exactly. He knew why he was doing it. He was doing it out of a sense of duty. But he had no idea why Red didn't just take his weapons and go and hide in the box himself. Why he was going out of his way, doing a field blood transfusion to save Wrestler's life. Like, that just did not compute with him. And
yeah,
I think it started some very interesting questions for that relationship.
Absolutely. While Samar, that we discussed last week, that did a fantastic job in doing that, and then this week she's finally, I love that moment she had when Cooper just said, get over it and do your job.
Oh, my favorite. My favorite there was when she realized the boat was, or
maybe
the
underwater.
Yes, and it hit her.
It was beautiful, and he says, when Aram says was the only moment Aram had that he couldn't lose Liz again, and somebody said, I don't think anybody can, and you realize that they're really being hard hit by this. And
Tom called it at the christening. They are a dysfunctional family. That is what they are. That's what it boils down to with them. Is they are just a very dysfunctional,
and I don't think
sort of family.
That Tom was lying when he said that they were a dysfunctional family and that he wanted them to. Yeah.
Well, we talked about last week that Tom never actually lied to the task force. If he didn't care about them, if he did not see them as people,
it would have been like he lied to Amanda or to Red, or
exactly.
He went out of his way. He did it a Red, and the way he spoke was very precise.
For a man that was raised the way he was, for a man that makes has made his bread and butter off of lies.
Nobody raised him. He raised himself.
Well, that's fair. He would tell you that the major raised him. Because he says that to Bud, to his face.
That was the only thing that he had. And you realize how sad that the only person he can thank for raising him is a man who picked him up. Well, it may not have been 14 now. They may have.
They may have retconned that.
But whatever it was, the time, he was in a 5-year-old child. He was an adolescent, and that's the only time that somebody could be told to be raising him.
We've been told, several times that he's never felt love. He does not remember feeling love before Liz. That's the first person he has ever felt in his life made him feel loved and accepted, and in which he wanted to return that as well. You can imagine that, because Bud told him, you play the boyfriend. So, obviously he's been in roles in which he's, manipulated situations. But this has never happened before with him. And it's a very unique situation. It's the first time he's ever felt that, and that has spurred him on in turn to
and now he has this dysfunctional family around him.
Oh my goodness.
And even Red, in a way, I think that he will, and I do think, a part of it is it's the world Red moves in. I'm not sure it is Red that he objects to and that he wanted to get away from.
Oh, well, and they talked about that when Tom first found out that she was pregnant with Agnes. That, she said, Red's world, and he goes, no, our world, yours and mine, our world. And it was very much a not Reddington's world. I think he knows what Reddington's world is, and he wants out of it. He wants to have a job that he's not getting shot at. Obviously he's going to Redemption, so he's going to take a dangerous job. But I think in an ideal world, Tom would like out of
Except that I don't think that he could even function there. Same as I hear Liz saying she wants to have a quiet life.
I don't think he would like to go. I feel like that when he played the terrified FBI husband in season 1, he wasn't playing very much. I've always wondered how close he was to breaking his cover when Enslow Garrick told him that he was the man that was going to put a bullet in his wife's head. Like when he called Liz in the Enslow Garrick episodes and talked to Garrick, and that look on his face was very much Jacob Phelps. There we had him. And I've always wondered how close he was to breaking cover and going, I'm done. I know where these people are. I've been there. I'm about to go rush this place and save my wife. You know? And just not giving a damn about the major, about Berlin, about anything. And like, I will handle the consequences when they come. I'm saving my wife. I wonder sometimes if he wasn't talking to the FBI on his cell when he was waiting for her, but had called whatever contact he had and couldn't get through to say, you know, she is in danger. I have to do this, you know, and was trying to find a way to do it without totally destroying himself in the process. Because, well, like we talked about earlier, you know, it was before he chose Liz over the job. So he was still weighing that back and forth and still conflicted there. But I've often wondered how a man of his training managed the terrified FBI husband, because I think he really was all through there. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Are we ready to move on into the parallels? We have 2 parallels that we're going to go over.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. The first one was Tom and Kate, and this actually came up today when we're recording this. Off of something that I was talking to various people on Tumblr about, and put up a gift set of it. It was very interesting because we had at the beginning of the episode, we had that scene in the plane with Kate, Tom, and Red, and they're talking, and Kate turns to him and says, you know, this is my fault. It was very much I feel guilty over this. I am so sorry about this. I am apologizing to you for this. This is your child. This is your pain that I feel like I have caused. Whether I was doing I still think that Kate thinks she did the right thing, but, you know, it screwed up, and she understands that, and she is sorry for the pain she's caused Tom in this. And in a very emotionally mature fashion, which is kudos to him, because I'm always all for Tom growing in emotional maturity, because he's behind the curve on that. Considering, you know, first time he ever felt love for someone was like 27, 28 years old, somewhere around there. But he turned to her and said, this is not your fault. You gave us a chance. And I would do that all over again. And so he does what he can in his moment to alleviate her guilt. And then we turn around at the end of the episode, and he's sitting in the car with her, and he apologizes to her for little Nikos, saying, I did it for my daughter, but essentially, I'm sorry that I caused you pain. A friend of mine over on Tumblr referenced back to season 2 when Liz told Cooper, when she was talking about holding Tom, she said, I'm not sorry that I did it. I'm sorry that it had to be done. And that's very much what Tom's saying to Kate right then. That this was a necessity, but I'm sorry that it hurt you, you know, on an emotional level. And which is big for him, but she turned around and basically said,
I'm not. Yeah, don't worry. You're not making things easy.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it was don't worry. It wasn't a don't
worry.
Oh, no,
don't worry about telling me any of this.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything to me, because, you know, Red's going to kill me. It was all about Red.
Yeah.
But she did not. She was
not going to make it easy for him.
No.
And I understand that was she was processing the issue with Red. It really didn't have anything to do with Tom in that situation, but it was an interesting parallel because he had gone out of it. You know, he took that step to try to comfort her emotionally, which is huge for him. And then Kate, who is actually pretty good with that, reading emotions and shifting her, you know, she's really good at comforting people, at making things easier, making things cleaner. She just was so done. She was so spent by that point that she was like, I love that you think I'm going to make this easier for you, but I won't.
Well, it just occurred to me that also that there's in my conflict in seeing Red, and a lot of people are very angry with Red. I am not. I do think that there was some enough bizarre things that Kate was doing, between the weird kiss, the time she opens her eyes, she lingers at the end in 401 when Red is talking to Esteban. As soon as she hears Agnes, she stops, or a child, she stops. There is all these things, like, where did she get the gun that she took to Romina and got Agnes back? There's all these strange things for me enough to wonder. And also, Kirk was having a lot of information. He knew what Red had been telling Liz over a long period of time. So I did wonder who does Kirk has in Red Mist. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, sure it is Tom. I don't see that happening, because it's the logic doesn't support it. I mean, Tom has taken so many risks in being open that he's not going to go around and go to Kirk and tell him, especially after saying, what does it say to Kirk? You're holding a woman and a child, and
all that matters is that you have a woman and her child.
So it's not, you can see that there is no jabs. There is none of those little things that he did with Red in the hospital after Sam's death. There's none of that. I don't see that. I could see that that he got a feel that Liz's dad was alive working for Berlin, but I don't see that there. So the only other person left it's Kate. That was Kate in a way, because she was very forceful with Liz in offering her to fake her death. And I think that's one of the reasons that Red was so angry with Kate, because it's not that Liz came up to her and said, listen, help me do this. She put that idea in Liz's mind.
Yeah. And she I mean, to be fair, she took two terrified parents, brand new parents, that had just had their wedding shot up and nearly lost their child in childbirth, emergency childbirth.
Drugged.
And yes. And Liz was drugged. They were both terrified for their baby girl. And yeah, no, that's a fair statement. I personally, and I'm probably coming from this from a very emotional standpoint, that I don't want Kate to have betrayed Red on that level. Like, I don't want to think that's possible. I'm putting blinders on there. But I do see what you're saying, that there were a lot of unanswered questions there.
I don't know that I would say is betrayed her as what she said. I'm protecting you the way you do. And I think it's protecting him for himself. I do wonder if at some point, Red handed her that baby when Liz was a baby, put her in her care, and she's basically being a parent for Liz. So maybe she thought that at one point it was okay for Liz to get answers. Maybe she's saying, and remember he said to Red, you won't lose her no matter what happens. And at that point we had no idea what happens was.
Yeah.
We thought, it's because she's going to marry Tom. I don't think so. I think that she may have had this idea that maybe it was time for Liz to meet Rostov.
That's possible. Yeah, that's something I hadn't really contemplated, but that's a possibility. It depends. I think it really will boil down to if Kirk is, how truthful he's being. And there's a lot of questions on that.
I just
we
came
can
up.
Believe him.
Exactly. But if we could, because that's a big if. I mean, his story is still spotty. His methods are lamentable, make Red look like, paraphrasing Fitch, a Christmas elf. But certainly, if Liz is really Rostov's daughter, and there is any truth to the story that he's putting in Liz's head, certainly there would be a concern that why not let Liz have some answers? Why not give her some peace of mind?
And we have seen that Red is willing to, that he has contemplated giving her answers before, and he's backed out when he sat there in the caretaker and burned that whatever was in that letter.
Mm-hmm.
He had that letter and he burned that. He was not willing anymore to give her whatever answers those were. And so he is backed out of a lot of answers. Fear drives him on that, I think. Fear of losing her for good. So there is some secret there, some guilt that he has, or whatever it is that he feels like is going to drive her away for good, that he is more worried about that than losing her to death, which it could be possibly his ego doing that, or it's very difficult to put a real judgment on that until we know what that is.
Exactly. But there is a way that I can see that all those things can happen at the same time. I do not think it's impossible that most of what Rostov thinks is the truth and is telling Liz is the truth, at least from his perspective, that what Red thinks is the truth is true in his perspective, and that Kate was also trying to do right by Liz. But now looking back at all those scenes from, that is 3:11, that she said, you're not going to lose her. And that moment, there was nothing to lose her about.
Mm-hmm. Because we hadn't seen Kirk.
We hadn't seen Kirk. We had no idea what was going on. And I think that that's what she was talking about. She was talking about Rostov coming.
Sometimes it's difficult in the Blacklist to figure out what are characters foreshadowing and what are writers using the characters to foreshadow things. And so it could really be either way on that.
I do hope that she just went in one of their multiple wardrobe changes in Cuba and put on a vest. Because it was not a shot to the head, as people say.
I really couldn't tell. I've watched it several times.
Red never does shots to the head. Red is every single time except for Mr. Vargas, but Mr. Vargas was sitting down. It was not easy to do a body shot.
I was gonna say Vargas was a chest shot, wasn't it?
Oh, may have been.
People are thinking it's a headshot because the way the camera's angled is that when she goes down, you don't see the sun behind her, and then she jerks around, and suddenly you see the sun behind her. It gives you the impression of a headshot. It doesn't necessarily mean it is. It was for me. I've watched it several times now, and I couldn't tell where he shot her. I really think it was a camera angle that was playing the angles there, and it was very difficult to tell with the way she jerked around where he shot her.
Red always does body shots. It's a heart shot.
That would make sense.
And if she's any smart, she would just put a.
She certainly wears enough clothes for it. I mean, she always wears very, very high-collared, sort of clothing. Yeah. It would be very easy to hide.
And they are very thin one nowadays that she could probably wear and not be seen.
Absolutely. Are we going to go into our final parallel that we have on here?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Those we love. And before we go into the parallels, let me just intersect the themes that I've been seeing. I go for the themes of the Blacklist, the symbols. Water is one. We had plenty. That a scene of Liz nose diving that plane was absolutely delightful. And then, they're in the water and Rostov is drowning and she pulls him up. It was just, there was so much symbols there. It was great. And then there is the little violin that I saw in the room. And that's, Berlin had a cello. There has been plenty of pianos everywhere, but I've only seen those two string instruments. The piano, the cello in Berlin, and the violin in here. And it goes back to Dom. And music plays definitely. There is music is like sadness, or maybe I don't know. What do you think?
I honestly spotted it in the episode, but I did not remember it being in Berlin, in Berlin's hideout, but. I don't know what to make of it yet. It's one of those pieces of the puzzle that I'm going to kind of log away and keep in the back of my mind because I don't know what it means yet.
Whenever I've seen any character that has instruments or play music, be it the stew maker or anybody, most people who play music or have instruments, they all have a great sadness about them, a loss, a significant loss in their lives.
Well,
It's just one
saw
of the scenes.
We saw Kirk's face when Liz says something about a traumatic thing in your past, to make you think that these dark and traumatic things that you're doing to me now are okay. The look he got, I think, was very purposeful, and it was very interesting, and I think that we're going to find out eventually what those traumatic things are, and it'll be very interesting to do that.
Absolutely.
So moving into Liz and Tom and the parallel that we wanted to take a look at was the interesting thought on their search for information about their childhood, whether they knew it or not. I mean, obviously Liz knew it going through the summer palace that this might have a connection to her childhood. We see her get up and start to explore as she moves up the stairs and through the hallway. The camera shots were very, very similar. As I was watching it the first time through, that's all I could think about was the first Alexander Kirk episode, which was the backdoor pilot for Redemption. And that moment where Agnes has been taken, Scotty has her, Tom goes and rushes into the presidential fundraiser, which is funny because I feel like they probably should have had better security there for that presidential candidate, for Tom just to waltz in. But anyway, he gets escorted up to Scotty's office and he walks down that long hallway. We have very similar, the shots between the Keans, and I'll reblog this and I'll try to put it over on Facebook if I can figure out how to do that as well. But I put up a GIF set of the comparison with, you have Liz walking down the long hallway, Tom walking down the long hallway, and they both come, in their individual moments, they come to a door in which something medical is happening. We know it's Kirk on the other side for Liz, and the nurse walks up and closes the door in her face. For Tom, we don't know who's on the other side, but we hear a respirator. The general theory is that it might be Howard Hargrave, which would be very fascinating if it is. That means, because he is also closed out of that room, a gentleman walks up, we don't know who he is, if he's a doctor or if he's just a caretaker, walks up and looks at him and closes that door. Exact same shot as with Liz. That kind of taken back of, am I interrupting something here? What's going on? And the curiosity there. And they're both shut out of these answers. If that's Howard, they're both shut out of answers about their fathers.
And then they go into the room. Liz is looking at the same picture of Katrina in the swing that was at Red's apartment in Bethesda. And Tom looks at the picture of himself, not knowing that it was himself.
You've got several things with Liz. At the beginning, you have the book that she picks up. At the if you're lining up the scenes in the order that they come in, it would be the book and the photo, because Tom picks up the photo of Christopher and his parents at the beach, and that he's looking at with this, like you were talking about earlier when you were talking about the look that he gives Scotty when he's about to break her neck. This kind of look of, there's something familiar. It's if anybody's seen the old Fox animated movie of Anastasia, when she's remembering all of that, it kind of reminds me of that these memories that are coming back that have been lost to either trauma or purposefully blocked out via the situation Liz is in, et cetera, just whatever the case, these memories that are almost there, or on the tip of their memories, but they can't quite reach them.
Well, it's interesting because you say that, to put it in the same order. I find that I always look at the Blacklist as if it were one of those funny houses with mirrors, in which the parallels are never quite exact. There is always a little distortion going in. Like in those houses, you go there and you think that you have a door in front of you, except that the door is not there. It's all play of mirrors. So always look for a slight distortion. So Liz first looks at a book and Tom at a picture. But then eventually Liz gets to that picture, and there is a second one of her with a mother, and they're like eating a cake or something.
I saw that. I actually saw that for the first time. I didn't realize that in the first couple watch throughs, but I was gift making today, and I saw that one. And it's Lottie. It's the lady that's been playing in the flashbacks, and she's fantastic. I really hope they continue to bring her back.
And I wanted to say very intentional shots. For example, when Liz first meets Rostov and comes from the darkness and suddenly his face starts to get out of the darkness and he starts seeing it. And that is the exact same shot that when Liz remembers shooting her father. And it's the same shot. The face is down in the dark, then she shoots, and then the face comes out, and the man falls down. So those kind of shots are important. They are done on purpose.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I feel like it was really highlighted in this episode with Liz walking down that long hallway, and Tom, very similar, with the door being shut in their face.
And we also have interesting parallels going on as Liz meets Red in the same day and stabs him with a pen on the neck and the carotid. And the same day that she meets Rostov, she punches him and then tried to drown him and then takes a plane down because she's not living where her little daughter is. So simple as that.
I may be showing my shipper colors here, but, these are men that have both threatened her husband. That's what she does.
and that is, that's a second parallel. Red comes in and Zamani has gotten Tom for him. And Rostov is not messing up. He's just having him killed. And it's a very interesting distinction also between, in all this, is Rostov, or I think that Rostov definitely has a blood disease, and I believe that he's dying, and maybe all this desperation to get Liz at whatever cost is out of that. But I find interesting that both of these men react to Liz and what Liz loves in very different ways. Rostov is making decisions for Liz. Well, Red didn't kill Tom because Liz loved him. Red did not take the fulcrum, even if it was a matter of life and death for him. It would have been so easy. How many places that Liz has? She's living in a motel room to go and look for it. Yet he asked for the fulcrum. When he doesn't get it, he's getting ready to go away. And I think that is a level of respect, and that's the one thing that you say, well, there is more to Red being actually a father to Liz than Rostov.
All right. Well, I think those are the two or three big parallels that we were looking at. And there's going to be, good heavens, there will be so many more moving forward when we continue to get information on Kirk and Katerina and all of that information. I feel like there's a really good chance that Tom and Liz will have so many parallels with their parents, as we move forward and find out more about them.
And I think with that...
Yep, that about wraps us up. And it's absolutely Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, over on YouTube and SoundCloud. Conversation can be had and comments can be left.
iTunes. You can listen to us in iTunes too. And don't be shy. If you have a special request or things that you can see, we can consider. We don't say that we're going to do it, but we can certainly consider it.
Oh, absolutely. If you see something, because we go over, it seems to be that our general idea is to go over the way that people are approaching the Keens. If you want to see a certain outlook on that, or if you happen to see a certain parallel. We do love our parallels here at Keen Minds.
We do.
All right, just leave us a comment and let us know you are listening. It looks like we've had over 100 different listens on between YouTube and SoundCloud and iTunes. So we're really excited about that for our first launching episode. So we hope you stick with us.
Truly excited.
Absolutely, we want to thank you guys, and we love you all, and hope to see you for this episode and many to come.